Welcome back to At Your Peak. Really want to encourage you. Over the last 7 days, we did a series of talks called The 7 People You Cannot Help. I got this from my friend and mentor, Ron Corzine, nearly a decade ago. Great teaching. I expounded on these mindsets that really affect people, how to lead people through that, what to look for, and then asking ourselves the question, am I a person that really can be helped? Have I positioned myself to be helped, or do I just want relief? And there's a difference between empowering people and enabling people. And so these were some great talks that we had, but we're going to move on now and advance this. I want to build off of that 7-part series with a talk today called Handle Your Critics. Isn't that just a lovely topic? Don't we love to be criticized? Isn't it just phenomenal to be the source of people's backstabbing and gossipy chatter? I think all of us would agree that it's not real pleasant. But if you're going to lead anything, you're going to be criticized. It's just a part of it. Jesus got it. And what you can control is your response to that criticism. And you can also control your heart posture towards the critic. And it's one thing to be criticized. It's another thing to actually become like the people that are accusing you. These are some tools that I'm learning still to this day on how to love the critic without necessarily agreeing with all of the criticism. How to hear the critic, but not get torpedoed by the critic. How to take the pearls of wisdom from a critic without adopting their accusation. This is important for all of us to learn. So I want to talk to you about handling that criticism. And you can do that. I'm going to rifle through this because I wrote a lot of information, and you can always come back and review it later. But handle criticism by seeing it as a stepping stone. We all experience criticism. The more we achieve, the more opportunity for others to second guess, compare, and belittle. Monday morning quarterbacks are rarely in the game. Those who typically can do something, and those who can't often criticize. See Jesus as he engaged the Pharisees in Mark chapter 3. Number 2, recognizing the potential of truth in that criticism. Be honest. Recognize you don't possess the potential to do, that you do possess the potential to do whatever you're being criticized for. I mean, Paul and Barnabas in Acts 15, they got into it over one of their disciples, John Mark. Paul felt like John Mark dropped the ball. Barnabas didn't. They got into it. There was some intense fellowship over it, and they eventually parted ways over it. Later on in Scripture, we see that Paul, in his own way, puts that story to bed with John Mark and builds bridges. But there was some real sharp criticism that was levied against Paul by Barnabas and how that was handled. All right, separate the critic from the criticism. This is a major key in making the criticism profitable, and that is to not lend credibility to the critic. Now, we often think in an all or nothing structure. It doesn't mean that the critic is credible or even well-intentioned. Chances are, in many cases, they are not well-intentioned. However, don't go through the pain without determining to get the gain. I mean, criticism is tough, but sometimes you have to recognize, is there something in that person that is preventing me from receiving from them because they're super critical? I don't have time to get into it, but sometimes the Lord will send even a donkey to talk to you. Scripturally, I can show you where he used a donkey. Well, sometimes the Lord will put the most unlikely, and even sometimes there are mean-spirited people that if you're authentic with him and you're authentic with yourself, you can pull a nugget of truth out. Just don't partner with the rest of their attitude. All right, moving on. Recognize the opportunity for major personal growth. Criticisms, let's be honest, they hurt. If you decide that you're going to allow yourself to be more mature, then you have to start looking for the good that can come out of it. Challenge yourself to discover how the criticism is going to help you achieve more and become more. Let your character go to a whole new level. Leaders like politicians, business leaders, presidents, Congress, you name it, Leaders all understand that criticism goes with the territory. And some compartmentalize it, and this is my criticism box, and then I go home and it's a different box. But you know, Jesus was the same yesterday, today, and forever, and he was the same here as he was there. You never have to give up you in any sphere of influence. You can be the authentic you, no matter where you are. And you can deal with critics just like Jesus. Sometimes he was silent, sometimes he spoke, sometimes he challenged, sometimes he kept moving on. He was always doing what the Father was doing. So that means sometimes the Lord will ignore a challenge or a criticism, and he'll ask you to do likewise. You'll see a lot of times the disciples will, or people would say something and God would ignore them. It was like he didn't even hear them and he went on to the next thing. Sometimes we need to do that too. Just move on. Change the subject and let God deal with it. Another thing we need to do is forgive the critic right away. Forgiving someone does not mean that you can't learn a valuable lesson. If it's a betrayal, you're going to learn to be more sparing in your words to the person who has betrayed you. Nonetheless, for yourself, go ahead and forgive them. They really do not know what they're doing. Even if they did, nobody on this planet is born and says, hey, I want to just be mean, evil, and nasty. Now, there's people that look like they are, but that's not how they were born. They became that way. And it's out of a serious sense of lack and inferiority that anyone would choose to attack or criticize another. Dwelling on the lesson learned, not the critic or the hurtful words and delivery. We sometimes will replay these unpleasant events over and over. I think it's bad enough to have to go through something once, much less hitting rewind in our own minds and playing it over and over and over again. Learn the lesson, forgive the critic, and choose to get over it. And finally, evaluate your progress. Evaluate your progress. Each time that you go through a situation where you encounter criticism, you should see recognizable growth in your ability to handle it and process it. If you aren't handling criticism better today than you were 3 to 5 years ago, you're not living consciously regarding your personal growth. Live consciously. Know when you have gone to a new level of maturity in handling that criticism. Now, go and enjoy and celebrate your personal progress and growth. A quote from Ron Corzine. I know this was a longer one, but I want to play this message to you here. He says, "Many years ago, I sat down at my computer to reply to a critical letter I had received. I toiled over my reply. I deleted words and I wrote new sentences. It took me over an hour of exhausting work to carefully state a decent response to the letter. When I reread it, it still was not totally satisfied with my answer. Then it hit me. I had spent an entire hour writing a letter to a critic when I could have invested the same hour in writing a dozen notes of love and appreciation to those who have believed in me and supported my ministry. The one drained me of my energy. The other could have energized me. Jesus ignored the critics." Here's my parting thought and action step. Instead of wasting time on critics, why don't you take some constructive time and ask the Father who you can be appreciative of and energized by, and write letters of appreciation that will change the atmosphere over others you encounter. That's your action step. We'll see you tomorrow.